Right, well, hello everyone, and welcome to an unusual edition of What Next. Different cast today. I'm standing in for David Vance, so I'll try to emulate the great man, but I'm not sure I'll be able to be quite as professional. We've got another guest joining us shortly. He's having a bit of problem finding a laptop, which I'm sure most of us will understand that problem. But I'm very happy to have Richie Ghent with me. Richie is a boxing trainer who's been well, I won't steal too much of his thunder. I'll let him tell the stories. But he's involved in a lot of up and coming boxers, as well as having had people fight at very high level. And he's been innovative in overcoming the difficulties that we've had over the lockdown period. And he's looking forward to the future. And that's what we're going to be talking about in some detail. So, first and foremost, hello, Richie, and thanks for coming on, mate.
No problem, mate. Thanks for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. It's great. It's great to have you on. I mean, the way I think we should start this is really let people who are from maybe outside the Black Country, because we get people from all around the world actually watch this. Let them know a little bit about what you do in your gym and your setup, and and how, where you've come from. How did it all begin, and tell us a bit about yourself, so that when you're giving your views later on, the viewers know who you are and what you're about.
Well, I started boxing at the age of 14 due to the police making me wanted me to keep out of trouble. So the police got my dad to take me down to the local boxing gym, and I fell in love with the sport. I was an amateur boxer. I had 47 fights amateur, then I turned professional, and then since turning professional, I decided that the time was right to start my own gym, which I've done now. And I've got my own gym in Bilston, just off Junction 10 on the M6, and it's going from strength to strength.
Yeah, and you've not just been. I mean, originally when I got to know you, you were training up Joe Public sort of thing as well. But you seem to have got more of a professional stable going on, of people going in there now, and that you've had some notable experience recently going into a Eddie Hearn's bubble, haven't you?
That's it, yeah. We had to go to Eddie Hearn's garden, which was a great experience. Not the result we wanted, having Jason Wellborn get beat by Felix Cash, who's the top operator. So we did know he was going to have it hard, but yeah, it would have been nice to come away with the win. But yeah, great experience overall, seeing where Eddie Hearn used to live and just being in that matchroom bubble, which was amazing.
And what was it like there? I mean, the tales of people playing was it cricket or football together, and sort of generally socialising in the bubble.
Well, yeah, well, I think we was the third weekend of the bubble, the third show. What he done at his garden, and I think over the weekends a few people was getting bored, and I think it was Darren Barker who decided to bring some wickets. If you don't know Darren, he was the former world champion from London, boxer Repton as an amateur, and was really successful. He's a Sky Sports pundit now, and he thought it would be a good idea to take some wickets and a cricket bat and. Away we go. Then it turned into like I think it was 16 each team either side, and it was just a great way to finish the night every night while we was down there for 4 nights.
Well, I think that's the one part of that weekend I might have felt at home with. I think the rest of it would have probably worried me a bit. But so you were there as well when there was the an interesting bill, because it's women boxers are climbing up the ladder now of the billing, aren't they? And there was a West Midlands lady was fighting on the card, and she won quite a famous victory, didn't she? Can you tell us a little bit about that and what you saw there?
Yeah, right. Rachel Ball. She boxed the well-known Shannon Courtney from London, and it was just an absolute brilliant performance from Rachel. A lot of people thought it was a close fight, which I agree with, but I think the right person got the right decision, and now they're doing it all again in the rematch.
Well, having watched that fight, I think it's going to go the same way. But just to break in, our other guest has arrived. So just checking. Brett, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. You're a little bit frozen from time to time, but we've got the general gist of you, mate. We can see your handsome good looks on that on the screen, no problem. So to the viewers of the program, just a little bit of an introduction to Brett, because we've spoken a little bit about our other guest, Richie. Brett's a music promoter, someone who's got had quite a career, and it's up and coming really in promoting bands, mainly in the rock sphere, but not exclusively in that. and he's had quite a lot of experience of the difficulties that have gone on the last 12 months, and I think his views as we go along in how we proceed from here will be interesting. So, welcome to What Next, Brett, and thanks for coming online, mate.
Thank you for having me.
And just a little bit, we've just gone through a little bit of Richie's background and a little bit of what he's been up to. Before we get into discussing the future and how things can improve for businesses like yours, I just wonder if you can maybe tell the people watching a little bit about some of the work you've done, some of the names that you've worked with, and a little bit about your experience and what your career's been like.
So I predominantly work around, as you say, live music entertainment, live music events. We've worked with artists that have started just as an amateur background, gone right the way up. Our artists have toured the USA. Performers have gone into Europe. They've done some of the major festivals here in the UK, such as Reading, Leeds, Glastonbury and Download, Bloodstock. We work in numerous venues around the West Midlands. Some play host to 140 capacity, some right the way up to 700, 1,000 capacity. And that's where we're at. As I say, we work and profile these artists, performers, not necessarily just from the West Midlands. We do have artists and performers come from across the UK, some from Europe. We've had Australian performers, and we play host them and showcase their talent. Provide weekly, daily element on the evenings for punters and live music lovers from around the area.
And how, to start off with you, Brett, then we'll go back to Rich on this one. How was I can guess what the answer is going to be like, but how have the last 12 months been for your business, and how have you managed to sort of keep head above water, and, maybe you can give people a bit of an insight into the difficulties of a businessman in your line of work during this period?
Businesses, as you can imagine, it's just come to a complete standstill. We, especially during, the lockdown periods themselves, it is a complete standstill. There's no if, buts, or maybes about that. During the last 10 months, someone that usually puts on shows between 3 to 5 times a week, I think I have done one. We did one socially distanced show in a 700 capacity venue. This was the end of October. Towards the end of October, we did one socially distanced show in a venue that we were allowed to have 84 people in. Charity-based show for Macmillan Cancer. Immediately sold out within 3 hours of putting on, which was great. It shows that live music, that people are dying to get back out there, that they really need that in their lives, which was great to see. But and it was a great atmosphere. It was a great audience, even jumping through all the restrictions, which were necessary. I understand that all the restrictions that were in place, we got there, we did it, and it was fantastic. And people were so thankful and gracious that we did that. And it was hard work. It was a real juggle to get that show over. But other than that, it has just been a complete and utter standstill. The only thing that we have going is that we are rescheduling everything that was set, because people have obviously brought tickets, want to come and see the shows, want to come and see the artists and performers we have booked in. So it is scheduling, hoping that there is light at the end of the tunnel.
And I would imagine as well that, when you did that socially distanced show with the limited numbers of people, all right, it was for charity, but as a normal commercial venture, that just wouldn't have worked, would it, with that number of people?
No, not for a venue of that size and the overheads that need to be generated in order to sustain a venue of that size to continue its operations. Sound, tech costs, productions. Fortunately, the artists and performers, was a charity-based event, were quite happy to give up their time and the sense that they hadn't performed in such a long time, they were just happy to give up their time for charity, do something positive, and also get back out there on a stage and perform in front of a much limited crowd than what they were used to, but still be able to perform and showcase their talent and their product. But no, it's not feasible to run a venue of that capacity with those overheads, with those kind of restrictions on a long period at all.
And swapping back to you, Rich, I mean, obviously you'll have had, obviously at the beginning of the COVID situation, there were restrictions and rules and regulations with the general running of gyms and so on and so forth, which have only got stricter and stronger as the years gone on. What's your experience of that been, and how have you managed to keep the ship going?
Luckily, I've been able to have the grants off the government, which has helped out absolutely massively. Without them, I think the gym would have had to close. The amateur boxing side of things, the club itself, we've got our own constitution, separate bank accounts which run through that, and that's come to a bit of a standstill. But luckily enough, I've got the license on the premises, so the actual boxing club itself doesn't owe anything out. So luckily for the actual business itself, the government grants have really helped. When we did come back into training, to start with, it was a bit weird. It was restricted, so 2 meters, limited numbers in each class. Where I can have on a night time, I can have about 80 kids in here training, and that's gone from having 16 in max, 8 in each room. So we had to work around that, and then the last thing we thought would happen, we thought finally Boris has seen a bit of sense that gyms need to stay open for mental health. Massive, and like if anything, the doctor wants to see you keeping fit and healthy. If you are to catch COVID, if you're overweight, you're going to struggle. If you're in the gym, you're doing something about it. You're having the right vitamins, eating the right food. Then moving forward, there's a better chance that if you do get it, you're going to survive. So yeah, it's been really challenging, really difficult. But at the end of the day, it's the ride we've got to wave, and we've got to ride it now. So just see what happens moving forward, and hopefully, we can come out of this mess pretty soon and get the businesses back open.
And without those grants, as you're saying, you'd have probably, as a business, just not been able to carry on. And I find that fascinating as well, because just today I noticed on the Twitter feed of an MP called Steve Baker, who's a Conservative MP, who actually, although he always complains about lockdowns, he votes for them, saying that obesity and weight gain has doubled during the lockdowns, and that he's concerned about it. I mean, so that really backs up what you're doing. It's not just a business that you're involved in there; it's a public service in a sense, isn't it?
That's it. Yeah, I think we fall into that category where we are essential. Now, there's gyms probably out there that might have took advantage of reopening and crammed everyone through the doors. But I don't blame them if they didn't have that grant, because that's what they need to do to keep the business going and to put food on the table for the family. But for the businesses out there that did get a bit of help off the government, I think it's massively important that if we do it, we need to stick to the structure and do it right. And there needs to be a bit more information out there for people who are still scared to go out the house, who are eating, who are becoming mentally unstable. There needs to be something out there in place. So when these lockdowns or the restrictions are lifted slightly, there's a plan moving forward to get people like myself. I put on, I think last February I was weighing 12 stone 2, and then just January just gone I was at 14.6. So even at myself, and I'm still active in the gym. I'm still doing things with the pros. I'm allowed to open because I train pro athletes. So even then, I'm still trying to tick over and keep as healthy as I can. But then even then, if my food's not right and I'm not doing enough steps in the day and getting into a calorie deficiency, then I'm going to struggle. And I think it's for anyone who's over the age of 50, moving on. Like I think that's a massive key, really.
Yeah, well, speaking as the one bloke on here who is over the age of 50, yeah, I'll agree with you on that one. I'm in the company of young, up and coming, up and thrusting entrepreneurs here, so I'm the old man in the room for a change. Brett, you one of the things that I know you've spoken about in the media and been involved in it is linked to what Richie was just saying about the grants and the support from the government, and your line of work hasn't really, or certainly not until late in the whole crisis, hasn't really seen the right kind of support, has it?
Yeah, it's like we've been pushed to the back of the line again. As you say, with what I look into and what we work with, we don't just deal with the live music aspect. We deal with nightclub life, nightclub environments, and that kind of economics as well, which has basically received absolutely nothing. Fortunately, the live music grassroots venues, if they were fortunate, because remember, not every grassroots venue was accepting this. Received a grant from Arts Council England, which we were massively thankful for. It was a great help, as well as the small little grants that the government has been issuing out. At the beginning they issued out everyone X amount depending on their rateable values, and then now going forth from the end of October with a little bit here every 14 days. And I understand everyone's in the same boat. There's only a certain amount of cash in the pot, support in the pot, so to speak, and we've got to make it last until we do get out of this. But it just seems, it feels as though our industry has, to a certain degree, been left by the wayside. As fortunately, Arts Council has issued, I think it was 5.7 billion that's been distributed to so many grassroots venues, theatres, arenas, etc., which is great. But as I say, certainly not every venue that I work in has qualified for that. Not every venue up and down the country has. Even when the grants were being issued from round one, because we're now going into it's a 3-stage rounds of which different venues can apply for, which is a strange process because surely everyone's struggling at the same time. I understand it's a big project to undertake, but it has been such a long period of time in between round one to round three, and decisions still haven't been made for round two, of which venues are now closing still. Unfortunately, some places are just not going to open their doors. As I say, it has been a lifesaver for what little we've had, but it still isn't enough, and it's not going to save everyone, which is the sad reality of this.
Yeah, and when you say that, I mean, I think most people are aware of venues and clubs and pubs closing or threatening to close. Well, what would you estimate, sort of in your knowledge, the damage has been to your business sector, Brett? Where how, as a proportion, how many of them do you think are going to come back, is it just too catastrophic to even think about?
It's happening. It was happening throughout. I mean, it was happening before, and live music. Everyone loves a show. Everyone loves to go and see live music. That we like to think of, but the overheads were always ever increasing. People's expenses couldn't usually dictate that they could come out every week or every couple of days to see a different band, different genres. So it was becoming a hard business, a hard industry to keep afloat prior to this. And then, like I say, with the lack of support that was initially thrown out and how long it's taken for people to react and the support to get to the places it needs, then, as I say, venues that haven't clicked over and been accepted for this grant money, they have closed throughout this. It is a case of, what places aren't going to open up at the end. We know that places are closing down, not coming back throughout this. We see it over our social medias. We get the emails come through in our forum groups between us and the venue coordinators and the venue owners, just saying, guys, we've got to throw the towel in. Unfortunately, we can't do any more. We can't wait hoping that we're going to get something in the pipeline 2 or 3 weeks later. We've got to go now. And that is the sad reality. I don't know how many have closed. We are definitely talking double figures, and that's just, to my knowledge, smaller grassroots venues. The big guys are obviously be okay. Your likes of your LG Arenas, your bigger O2s. It's the small grassroots independent venues where, these artists start, where we do get the next AC/DC, where we do get Guns N' Roses, where you do get the next Rag and Bone Man that start. These are the ones that are facing the burden of not opening their doors again, and a lot already taken that decision, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's the issue, isn't it? Really, it's killing the sort of the opportunity for the underground movement to get bands and performers raised up, and many of the most famous ones that really have been groundbreaking have come through that way, and then many of the ones who go through the big media sausage grinding machine are the frankly garbage that that we hear churned out on the X Factor and things like that. So I think you're hitting on something there, Brett. But to swap back to Rich for a second, Brett's talking about the problem for the small and independent venues there. You're involved with a relatively, although growing, small and independent boxing gym setup, and you're well networked with other boxing setups around the area. Are they going through the same kind of hell, or are you guys managing to cling on? You're getting the right support. Is it a different story to Brett with you guys?
No, it's a very similar story with the professional boxing side of things, because what you've got is your small law boxers, and then boxers are the lads who box at your Wolverhampton Civic Hall, your Dudley Town Halls, or your local community centres, really, and because there's no money and there's nothing being put on for them, there can't be boxing. So I've got three boxers who've been ready to fight since last February. All out of work, depending on professional boxing to make a living, and they haven't been able to receive a penny. I know small law promoters as well, they're more struggling. But then the likes of Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren, who get the major TV money, they're pretty comfortable.
So we've got a common thread, really, of the
Yeah.
sort of the independent guys, the smaller guys getting screwed, and the big boys, the corporate world, thriving. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, that's a bit right, mate.
Yeah, that's funny, there, isn't it? Well, I mean, having painted this gloomy picture, I think I'm going to take it in turns with both of you now to see. Right, we're going to talk about lifting of restrictions, how that should be done later on, because I think that's probably going to be a longer topic. But as we are now, just assuming that things stay as they are now, and the government isn't keen on lifting restrictions, or they do it very slowly. Starting with you, Brett, what kind of support, what kind of targeting of finance do you think is needed in your sector to help the guys like you, the organisations you work with, the smaller independent people to survive? How can it be done differently?
I wouldn't say that we can't change anything that's happened. What I would say that needs to stay in place is the business rates relief. Absolutely must still be. We must still go forward for the next 12 months to have business rates relief. A lot, regardless of how you look at this, restrictions are going to hopefully start being lifted from March, middle of March in some capacity. We are praying and hoping that we do turn of live music, of in-house performances, of indoor performances, sorry, at some point this year. Hopefully it is summer, but we are all set in the motion that we will get live performances indoors in grassroots venues this year. Whether we get them in arena style, your LA arenas, your O2, your Wembley, probably not. I know guys who work in that capacity of level of venue, and their are being pushed back again into 2022. As I say, but for small independents, for us, we desperately need that relief to continue, the business relief to continue for the rest of 2021. Otherwise, it's not. Go on, sorry.
I would just say, and I'm guessing the reason for that would be, even if they do start to phase the reopening, as we touched on earlier, when you've got a limited number of people who can come in, you're not going to be breaking even with some of the capacities and the amount of people who can pay the money to come in.
Exactly. I mean, my worry about this is there was I went on for an article that came out on Sunday that they are trialing shows again in a venue in London and a venue in Bristol. And the rules are that they want to bring in this kind of health COVID passports to prove that you are safe to come into the venue, and the venue can only operate at 25%. And I was absolutely totally against this and raised many numerous points. I, like so many other of my peers, want to get open. It's not just the financial aspect. We want to put a show on. This is what we got. This is what our careers have been built around. This is what we know what we do. We want to put a show on. We want to get the performers on stage, showcasing their talents, showcasing their creative abilities to the punters, to their fan base. That's what we want to do. However, we have gone through 10 months of hell so far. The sun, the horizon is coming up. It is getting there. We know that it's coming. We don't want to be rushing it. And this is what this trial is going to be, is that they want to trial 25% capacity with these restrictions in to try and force us to get open April, May. If we just have to wait a couple more months and be open with a lot more restrictions, but have that support continue for those 3 months, you will find so many more venues and businesses will continue and will hold out for those extra months in the hope that we will be able to open in a more reasonable, more like normal circumstances, as opposed to being forced to open, the support being taken off of us because we can open with these very harsh, unrealistic restrictions, like I say, 25% capacity and other things that will come into it.
Yeah, Rich, going back to you, I mean, one of the things I think that Brett touched on is what people want to put on the show, and also people need to go and see a show. People need to, for their mental health, for their sanity, need to have some of the things back that they enjoyed, and obviously boxing and fitness is really crucial to a lot of people who have issues with mental health, and I think it's being underestimated. I mean, your view on really the state, I guess, of the amount of work you guys like you are going to have to put in when the gyms are properly back open to get everyone's head straight. I mean, how do you think the land lies at the moment? From your experience.
Well, what I've found at the moment is there's a lot of kids with football being allowed to use allowed to take part in football before you was allowed to start back boxing. And a lot of the boxing kids who I did have here, all of a sudden, joined football teams. So even then, the numbers and the memberships that you did used to have, you're more or less starting from scratch again, and hoping that them old faces do carry on coming back in and to support the gym. But like I said, like the main word I picked up just when Brett was saying is hope. And I think at the minute that's all we can do. If we can keep hoping that things are going to go back into place, and he was damn right when he said if we can't open to full capacity, if that support's still there, then that'd be amazing. I know the gym received money in December, money in October. Obviously, we had some for the lockdown in November, but that bit of money we did have in October and December helped massive alongside the memberships, which made a massive difference when it comes to paying rent, which was a lot. Didn't put too much stress on us as a business, so we was able to manage it. But moving forward, if I was to say, right, restrictions are you can have 25% in, but you've got to carry on paying your full rent. The rates are still got to be now topped up. Then businesses will fold later on in the year. They won't be able to maintain it.
And starting with you on this one, Richard, and then going back to Brett afterwards on this one, that there's a growing suspicion that when we do start to get an opening, there's going to be almost a possible, vaccine passport. You're going to have to sort of see someone's documents before they're allowed back in. Now, I mean, as your line of work is about physical health and everything that goes with that, if those rules were imposed, and bear in mind you've got professional athletes working with you as well, how would you feel about that?
Very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. I think the vaccine's been, my personal opinion, it's been rushed. Now, for us to just start taking that straight away and thinking this is the right way and this is the way forward, then I believe myself as a lot stronger-minded character than just to say, okay, in the last 6 months, I've been told this is the way forward in my life, or this is what I'll do. It's going to be a really, really hard situation for me to be put in. For example, if Frank Warren says all my fighters can box, but they need to have the vaccine, and it means I have to have the vaccine, then am I being forced into a corner to take it just for my fighters? So it's scary times when you think of it like that moving forward, but it's I don't know. I don't know where I stand with that at the moment. I think I should just possibly keep my thoughts to myself at the moment before I do start talking about it all.
Well, put it on a different aspect. With you being involved in physical health so much, for those of us who haven't had the vaccine yet or might not get it, do you think that through physical exercise and the right dieting we can build up our immune systems? Obviously, I'm not asking you about the powers of COVID, because you're not the scientist in that respect. But do you think there's a lot of positive energy to be gained from actually changing diets and doing more physical exercise, the right kind?
100%. That's the way forward. I think every disease and every virus, anything you can get out there, there's something out there, grassroots, what can help prevent and cure. I think it's just us stubbornness and too much money in the when it comes down to the pharmacy companies, they're making too much money. So instead of actually putting a lot more money into like nutritional advice, doctors talking about nutrition on a more so basis, instead of seeing your GP and then him saying, well, what I'll do now, I'll prescribe you this. And then within 5 minutes, you're in the office, out the office, where if they was to actually sit down and spend a bit more time with you over 20 minutes just discussing nutritional value of everything that you're meeting at the time and what you can eat moving forward and what food you should be taking. I think that could be a possible route moving forward. That could be a lot more, that could be a lot safer than taking the vaccine.
Yeah, and over to you, Brett. Now, I think probably in entertainment venues, I think this vaccine passport idea has been discussed. Well, I've certainly seen it discussed in political spheres that might be one way of a fuller reopening. What would the practicalities be? I mean, not just asking you what you thought of it, but practicalities wise as well of having to make that be a case. Would that be something you would feel comfortable to if it just allowed you to get things reopened?
I mean, again, it was a conversation that we had. This vaccine passport was something that was brought up with these trial shows that they announced on Sunday. It was a topic that I brought up in conversation. With regards to if we take out the personal opinion, everyone that's been vaccinated so far is either high risk. Underlying symptoms that are starting to come through, frontline workers or 75 and over. Without taking in the live music and going back over to Richie's side, how many of those people go to the gym? How many of those people are professional boxers or amateur boxers that want to go? So my argument is you want to go back to the gym, you want to go back to the sport you want to do, you want to go back into live music venue, but you haven't been called up yet to have the vaccine. Okay, so then you are stereotyped because of age or because of your health, that you don't have any health conditions, that you cannot yet, you have not yet been called up to have the vaccine. Does that therefore stipulate that you cannot go back to normal life, that you cannot go into the gym? Does that mean then that we've still got to stay shut because we are stipulating to a generation that hasn't been called up yet that you can't come in because you're still high risk of passing this virus over? It opens up this massive can of worms of, well, are you still going to support me? Because my clientele is based from 16-year-olds to 30-year-olds that are still in the prime of their life that want to get fit. And as I say, I'm just taking Richie's example, his industry there. It's a big can of worms to open. Does it work? Possibly. Will it be safer to know that, people that are coming in? Maybe. But if you want to go, but you haven't had the vaccine, what's the solution? Okay, you've got to prove that you've had a test, or you've got to turn around and take a test on entry. So you're doing it under a grassroots venue of 120 people. Okay, so let's say we go with 40 people because of the restrictions of capacity, let's say. 40 people, 20 of which have haven't had the vaccine, so they've got to take a test. It takes 10 to 30 minutes for that to come through. Where do you hold those people? One of them turns around and tests positive. Because they've been together for so long, waiting for the test to come through, does that mean that none of them can come in because the transmission period has taken place? So they keep them cancelled. So the performers are then disappointed because of this. Who pays for the tests? If we have to have the tests in for people to be granted entrance, does that mean that we as the entertainment provider have to pay for these tests? If that's so, then the ticket prices have got to go up because you've got to reimburse those already overheads that you are now adding more on to be able to put this show and this performance on. Who then takes the tests? Who then oversees it? Is it qualified to go and get tracked? So many questions. Like I said, a massive can of worm with this thing. It needs a lot more thought going into it.
Yeah, there's a lot more thought required, but I fear that this might be one of the things that they bring in to force people into it. Well, a quick question for both of you guys before we carry on. Have you? I'll start with Richard, and then I'll come on to you, Brett. Have you or anyone you know had COVID? And if so, how did it go? How did it feel?
No, I haven't. I haven't had no symptoms or anything moving there. Possibly, funny story was, well, I say it wasn't really very funny, to be honest. Really. So last January, my wife's cousin, we had a phone call off her dad saying that you need to come to the hospital, you need to see Scott. He's in intensive care. So my wife and her sister all went over and paid him a visit in intensive care. And the staff was in there, and they was all saying that they do not know what was the matter with him, but there's something on his lungs, and he couldn't breathe, and what caused his lung to collapse. Now he's 35, and he is fit and healthy, and he said he's never experienced anything like it before in his life, where he just could not breathe, he had no energy, and it lasted for about 4 days, and then he's lying on the sofa, and he just started struggling to breathe, and his wife actually took him to hospital. Then they rushed him into intensive care, and he was in intensive care, I think, for five days. My wife actually went in there to see him, as you could, because this was before we got really announced that this COVID hit the UK. And actually, over that January time, December period, it was probably the worst I've ever been in my whole life, with flu symptoms, aches, pains, couldn't breathe. So I was possibly wondering whether I actually had it then. But yeah, since then I've been absolutely fine.
And Brett, have you had any sort of intimate experience of anyone you know or yourself having a COVID or anything like that?
I've personally not. I've known people that have tested positive, and it has totally and utterly knocked them about. Guys and girls of multiple age ranges, some healthy, some not so healthy, and it is a massive thing. It has knocked them for seven, and it is frightening. In that sense, it is a very real thing. It is something that we are living with. It is something, in order to get open and back to normal, it's something that we've got to get on top of. But personally, no, I haven't had any symptoms or tested positive or come down with this. But I do know a few people that have had it, and as I say, their stories on what they tell are, it's not pleasant, it's not nice, and it does knock you around.
The reason why I asked the question is twofold, really, because obviously we all acknowledge that this thing exists, but we also acknowledge that there's a knock-on result of the lockdown measures. And my belief on this is that we have to find a balance where we it almost sounds cold-hearted, but where we appreciate that this thing's there, it's going to cause some people some damage. But on the other hand, we know that by locking down and not doing things, we're causing people physical damage, mental health damage, and economic damage all at the same time. And I think it's finding that balancing point. And this is where, guys, we're going to sort of freewheel out a little bit. And I think I'll start with yourself, Brett, and then go back to Rich, and just say, what's your view? Do you think we should go for zero COVID? Do you think that's even possible? Well, what point do you think, you know, in your own estimation, which is as good as anyone else's right now, what point do you think it's time to say, right, we've got this thing under control, we now have to open up as much as is possible?
I think you're right in saying that, our opinion is as good as everyone else's at the moment, because it is just so up in the air. So many U-turns, without getting too political on this too, so many U-turns, so many shoulda, woulda, coulda. Hindsight's a great thing. There is no correct answer, like you say. It is just thought. It is a serious, as we say, we all know it is a serious issue. We all know that it is taking lives, it is life-threatening, but we also know that while these lockdown procedures and these restrictions are clearly, from the stats that we are being fed and given, are reducing case rates down. Death rate is now down. I think it was 3,500 case rates down from this time last year or something. I was checking earlier, it could have been more. The death toll is 400 plus down from this time last week. These lockdowns are clearly bringing it down with the help of the vaccine and other things, from that we're practicing. However, the issues that it's causing to people's health, mental well-being, stability, the education system for our young kids that are growing up, I've openly turned around and told people from my educational background, when I was helping out with colleges and universities, my friends that were going through university in their second and especially in their third years, I was singing from the hilltops, take a gap year. Just take a gap year. You are paying £9,000 a year for an educational service that you are not getting the most out of in one of the most important years of your life. Take the gap year. Yeah, you can't travel anywhere, but it's just, it baffles me, how they can charge, but that's something else. Going back to the question, there's got to be a balance, and I think once taking the political viewpoint, I know some of the ministers and the MPs are all calling that once the over 50s, I think 50, 45-year-olds, that bracket range has been reached and everyone's been vaccinated, and the majority of the 85 plus and high vulnerable have been vaccinated with their second dose. If this vaccination is proving to work, if it is as powerful as what they're all testing and saying from the stats, then there should really be next to no restrictions left, surely. I think that's around May time that they've estimated for that. I'd throw my pot in with that. It's not something that we're gonna dismiss and get rid of. It's gonna be here for a while, clearly, but we've got to learn to live with it safely, that protects our most vulnerable and protects the majority of the population. So would that work? I'd go with that on that one, I suppose.
Yeah, that's an interesting line, and the only thing that I find amusing, always gets to me, is that it's in all the figures and all the commentary that it's the over 50s the group. Well, this over 50 don't want the vaccine just yet. I don't mind, I might have it eventually, but I don't really fancy it just yet. And the only communication I can ever get with my bloody doctor is when he's trying to force a flu jab on me, which I don't want that either. And so, I understand that there's the breakout points, but I think it's something that quite a few of myself and my contemporaries who are, around the early 50s, shall we say, look at it and think, hang on a minute, why are we being classed in as the bloody vulnerable? But you're right in the way you put it. Back to Rich now, and I'm sure he's going to have some sarky comments about me being over 50 and old and vulnerable. But what's your take on it, Rich? I mean, what do you think the balance should be? When do you think we should reopen? And do you think that the current route that's being gone down, as Brett said, we've all got a right to an opinion on this, because no other bugger knows anything any better than us, do they? So we might as well state our opinions on this. What would you do if you were in charge of this situation? Where would you draw the line?
Well, if I was Boris, what I'd be, my personal opinion would be just completely shut down the whole country for 4 weeks, no building, everything completely closed. You can't be having a full lockdown and then allowing someone to go and work in B&M, own bargains, and then having like 50 staff working one shift, sharing the same canteen. You can't be having a full lockdown and then having that happen all throughout the country and all different companies still allowed to stay open. If we're going to try and get rid of this, then let's completely shut the whole nation down. A true lockdown, a proper lockdown, stricter rules, just for 4 weeks, so we can all pull in together and just say, right, we're going to put this completely to bed. Let's have 4 weeks now where we do it together. Where I think what he's done in the past, he spoke about we're pulling together, we're doing this, we're doing that, but there's been certain rules for one company compared to another, where it's like, hang on a sec, no, why should you be able to stay open? Why we've got to close? And it's a bit like, no, it's not going to happen. I'm going to continue doing it my way, whether it's illegal or it's behind the government's rules. I'm just sticking with it. And I think that's what's been a major issue for the last 6 months. I think if we'd have all just come together straight away and gone, look, this is the way it's going to work, this is what's going to happen, and then moving forward, I think we might come out of this mess. I think we're going to have to live with COVID now for the rest of our lives, our grandkids' lives. I think it's always going to be. It's going to be here. It's going to be about. It's probably going to be called COVID 21, 22, 23 moving forward in the next few years. But it's common sense. When I go to a restaurant, I've never sat within a metre of someone next to me eating my food. And if I had, I'd put my hand up and say, excuse me, go another table. I don't really want to be listening to Boris eat his slurping on his steak. It's common sense. There's always been a 2 metre gap anyway in restaurants. When you go to the pub, you don't literally stand on someone's shoulder unless you're crammed into a bowl, obviously. But it's just common sense on our behalf. If in the past, if I've been to see my grandparents and I haven't felt very well, the words out my mouth are, I'm not going to give you a kiss, I've got the flu. I'm not going to get too close. I don't feel too good. So I think common sense on us all anyway is, I think what we forgot as a nation, that we do have common sense. We do not need someone to say to us, if you're unwell, do not leave your house. When you go shopping, make sure you stand within 2 metres of someone. If someone followed me around Sainsbury's, like within 1 metre of me, the whole way around and constantly on my shoulder, I'd be like, excuse me, mate, what's your problem? But because the government's released these 2 metre guideline rules, that now they're actually in front of us on a piece of paper and there for us to read and say, oh, we must stick to this, then the whole country's gone mad, in my opinion. But it's just, it's down to us having a bit of common sense.
Yeah, I've heard that opinion about the complete lockdown before, but the only thing that I always think with that the sort of Achilles heel of it is, as soon as someone arrives in the country, it's back.
Just completely shut that off. Completely shut flights, everything completely off.
But how long for?
Just as long as you can manage, like supermarkets, food coming in. That's where they need to be having the sit down, the real talking, not thinking about spending so much money on track and trace and seeing other companies go under. When, do you know what I mean? Like, let's face it, this track and trace system hasn't worked, and how much money's gone into it.
Well, you might. I mean, someone who was cynical might say it's a really good way of a load of Tory donors getting a load of money in their pocket, but I wouldn't personally say that, should any lawyers be watching. I just happen to think that someone cynical would think that it's very odd the number of these people getting contracts who happen to be friends with Matt Hancock or happen to be something to do with the Tory party. But of course, I would distance myself entirely, and of course, Open Dialogue just entirely from that statement. We don't think that. We're just saying what someone else might think. Brett, I think I can almost feel the producer of the programme screaming at me as I said this. Brett, before we go on to the last few minutes where we're going to lighten it up a bit and get on to the things that you two guys really love, last question on COVID. And again, who knows? Do you think this whole thing started from a bloke eating bat soup?
What a question. I know that again, I am really trying to stay away from mainstream media, news medias at the moment. Well, I was until things started to get a bit more positive, because it was just, as we say, people were struggling. It was really getting me personally down, just constantly seeing the negativity. But I did read an article yesterday about the WHO team that have actually finally been allowed into China, where this all supposedly originated. And it may not have been from someone that eating bat soup, but they are looking at the idea that it has transmuted from animals at some level. I have absolutely no idea. I can't imagine that someone having bat soup has started all this stuff now. It's
Well,
who knows. It's something that we will probably never find out the truth about it. But to me now, it's we eat, people in the world eat a lot more strange, weird, and wonderful things than that for this to transmute into a global pandemic disease that's killed over 1 million people by now.
yeah. So, well, I mean, obviously, as we all know, the World Health Organization is absolutely above all reproach and isn't at all sponsored or supported by China. We'll know that to be the case as well. That's another factor. Rich, any speculation on what? I mean, your guess is as good as mine as anyone else's. Where all this might have started from? Do you think it was a bloke with his bat suit?
The film Contagion. So I think someone's watched that film and got inspired.
It's just like it, isn't it?
Yeah, Chris, if you watch that film, that all come down from a bat. No, my personal opinion that it's no way on earth has this come from a bat. But who am I to know?
Oh, okay.
That's all I'm saying.
I like that.
Yeah. I thought I was the one who's supposed to used to be in politics here. You two doing the political answers. Very good, very good. Right. Well, we're into the home straight now. So this is the bit where you get to really freewheel and give us your bit. I'll go to Brett first, and then Rich. In the coming year, now we've spoke a lot about a lot of heavy stuff, a lot of difficult stuff. In the coming year, in the field of music and entertainment, who would you recommend to people watching this to check out, and who do you think might make it big? Start to make an impact on us from the world of music and entertainment. This is your chance to get the plug in for who you think's going to be the ones to watch.
I wouldn't like to turn around and say that, because regardless of what I say, with how many artists and performers that I work with,
You can give us a couple.
to upset. I'm bound to upset a few. There are guys that have done tremendously well that I am very proud of. Some of the guys that we work with very closely that have released music and album and products, and still been creative during this period, and have done very well. We all know from my background and in our industry that if you produce an album, it costs thousands upon thousands of pounds to do. And unless you are out touring that album, thanks to things like Spotify and YouTube and the easy access that people now have to stream, it is a nightmare to reap that cost back and make any profit. You need to be out there performing that product that you've created. However, my good friends in These Wicked Rivers, who are blues rock band, they released their first album in May, and it was just received phenomenally. Pre-orders were sold out, that they had to get more in. It was a good shout, and I was very proud of the work that those guys did, and how they tackled a very uncertain, strange, unique situation on producing their album, not being able to tour it, and still it being so well received. So they've done very well. And if you want to go, and if that's your kind of forte, that's your thing, rock blues, go and check those guys out. The one thing that I am highly waiting for, I've spoke to booking agents and band managers, record label management, up and down the the food chain, and we all seem to think that once this is over, our industry will have a boom. People are crying out, and I'm sure Richie will say the same. That once the gyms are open back out, people are crying out to get back out there, to see a show, to see a gig, to be in that atmosphere with other people. And so, you know, we are to radio call-ins on radio, on live national TV, and that is what, you know, yeah, people do want to get out there and they want to sit in the sun. It's probably not going to happen this year, but that is the big thing. Festival, get to a show. So we are really, really hoping that our industry will have a massive to this nightmare that we've been through in the last 12 months.
Excellent. Well, I certainly can speak for myself and say I'm dying to get to a show, that's for sure. As much as I lack in hair, I am still a headbanger at heart, and I would love to be going to a show. Right, same question to you, Richie. Forget all the nightmare, forget all the crap and chaos. Next 12 months, boxing world, either with your stable or someone that you've seen that you think's going to come good. Give us some tips. Give the punters out there some tips on who to look out for.
One of my fighters, Danny Ball, he's the current WBC welterweight international champion. He's fighting on the 26th of March on BT Sport. He's a local Dudley lad. Really well, like you've met Danny before. Top kid who can punch. He's very talented. So he's fighting on March the 26th. That'll be live on BT on the Frank Warren Show. And then I've got Connor Walker from Wolverhampton, who's just previously boxed on the Channel 5 Mick Hennessy show, and hopefully he can get back out there again sometime in the next couple of months with a big fight. Hopefully, lineup's waiting on some news now.
Excellent. And if people want to check out on that, they can look at the look at you on Twitter, or can they look at the boxers on Twitter or social media? Is there any way they can catch up with them?
Yeah, if I was to go onto Instagram, RG BoxFit, then they can find out all the information on there of the up and coming fights and see a few videos of the kids who box for the club as well. So we have from the ages of 8 to 35 who are competing. So you can follow some of the journeys.
Well, I've got to say I've seen both Danny and Connor in action training, and I've met them, and they're both fantastic blokes, down to earth, proper black country blokes, but also a lot of potential and quite exceptional amounts of talent, I think, really.
Yeah, I agree. It's just luckily now with Danny, we've managed to get him signed with Frank Warren. So when it comes to ticket sales and boxing on them small hall shows now, it means that he doesn't have to no more. He can push on to bigger and better things. So all being well, gets the 26 out of the way, and we could be pushing for a British title.
Brilliant. My fingers crossed on that. Brett, I didn't ask you the same thing about is there a social media or anywhere where people can check out what your bands or what you're up to? Is there any link that they should look out for or anything like that?
I mean, we just, obviously, with the venues we run at, we've got the Robin in Bilston, the Gifford Arms, Wolverhampton, the Slade Rooms, Wolverhampton, KK Steel Mill, Wolverhampton. Just check out any of your live music. Just if you put in a hashtag live music West Midlands, you will bound to find one of our venues that we're working and get some information on some of the bands. If you want to check out all of the bands that we support and look after, and you're a bit of an old music lover, I know how you are, Bill. If you check out Rockers Through the Ages, that's one of the main groups that we work with. We do a hell of a lot of charity work with those guys, raise thousands of pounds every year for the Wolverhampton Council, and we always support the unsigned up-and-coming bands there. Check that out. You'll more than have your fill. Rockers Through the Ages on Facebook.
Brilliant. Well, speaking as an old rocker in the vulnerable group who needs to have his arm full of jabs to stop him catching everything, I'm still rocking through the ages, and I still will continue to do so. So that's for sure. It's been a different kind of show for us on here tonight, but I've really enjoyed it. So I want to thank you both, lads. Honestly, it's been I've found it fascinating. So thanks both for coming on. Everyone. I'm glad you've enjoyed it, mate. And everyone watching, please do follow these guys, see what they're up to. Also, follow us on Open Dialogus. Subscribe to the account. Help us to keep on creating shows like this so that we can give you some reality, some real comments, some real information rather than what you might get on the mainstream media that might not be quite so compelling or interesting. So please do subscribe, share this around, tell your friends. But from everyone here on What's Next, an Open Dialogus production, I'd just like to say thanks very much for watching. Thank you to my two guests who've been brilliant, and a good night from all of us.
Thanks. Cheers.
Cheers, bye.